Hey guys, it's your boy Charles on Israel. Listen, I found this very interesting story. It's about this lady named Madame LaLauria. Madame LaLauria was a slave owner that lived in New Orleans. Very interesting story I found. I figured I would read it to you guys. Madame LaLauria whipped her slaves, gouged their eyes out, and poked holes in their skulls, leaving maggots to infest the openings. This is the only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to sickening acts and torture this 18th century slave owner committed against her slaves. Why she was so cruel remains a mystery to many. Perhaps the most tragic aspect of Madame Laloria's life is that she never faced justice for her heinous acts. Of course she did, especially back in those days. Who was Madame Lalauria? Madame Lalauria was born Maria Delphine McCartney in New Orleans, Spanish Louisiana, on March 19th, 1787. She was born into a very affluent family that owned numerous slaves. Although there was nothing particularly interesting about her childhood, at the age of 4, the Haitian Revolution erupted in 1791. During this revolution, her uncle was murdered by his slaves. The revolution did cause slave owners to be a lot harsher on their slaves in hopes of preventing further uprising. We can speculate that witnessing the Haitian Revolution and the murder of her uncle by slaves may have ignited the evil in her and her hatred towards slaves. She may have treated her slaves so appalling as a way to avenge her uncle. But either way, it's very difficult to comprehend the reasons behind her cruelty. None of the slaves she murdered and tortured had been personally responsible for her uncle's death, thus did not deserve to suffer at her hands. Madame Laloria was married 3 times to affluent men and had 5 children. Her first 2 husbands died. Her third husband was a young doctor named Leonard Laloria, whose last name she took, hence being infamously known as Madame Galoria. They lived together with their slaves at 1140 Wall Street in the French Quarter in a 3-story mansion Madame Galoria had purchased. So she purchased the house. The Lalorias were an affluent family, sort of like the Hiltons are today, who constantly threw lavish parties. They were well-respected members of society, and high society at that. Madame Laloria was somewhat of a socialite, and many women wanted to be her. She was beautiful and courteous. No one knew what happened behind the closed doors of her home. Her wicked ways seem to have started while married to her third husband. There is no evidence that Madame Laloria tortured or murdered any of her slaves before becoming Miss Laloria. It is also unclear as to whether her husband was also actively involved in the torture and murdering of the slaves. However, however, one thing is for sure: the mansion at 1140 Royal Street was hell for the slaves that called it home. Um, Rumors about Madame Laloria wicked ways began to spread when people started noticing that many of her slaves would mysteriously disappear. Although slaves were often treated as lesser than human during this time, there were still laws that prohibited the unusual, cruel treatment of a slave. Without concrete proof of a malpractice, people could do nothing about their suspicions. Things soon changed when the neighbor Things soon changed when a neighbor heard some screaming coming from 1140 Royal Street. It was one of Madame Laloria's youngest slaves, 8-year-old Lily, running away from her to avoid being whooped. In her attempt to avoid the cruel punishment, the little girl had fallen to her death from the mansion's rooftop. The girl was subsequently buried on the mansion's grounds. The incident involving Lily ultimately led to authorities impounding all of Madame Laloria's slaves. They were auctioned off to the public. However, being the cunning woman she is, Madame Laloria got a relative to purchase the slaves at the auction and later return them to her. The torture and murder of the slaves. The extent of Madame Laloria's ill treatment of slaves was unknown until April 10th, 1834. On this day, a fire broke out at the LaLaurie residence. The fire had started in the kitchen. When the police and fire marshals arrived at the scene, they found the house cook, an elderly woman, chained to the stove. Upon questioning her, they discovered that she had started the fire in an attempt to commit suicide. Why had the old lady decided to take her own life this way? Well, upon further investigation, the woman explained that Madame Galoria had threatened to take her to the top room. According to the cook, the one who went to the top room that had a red door ever came back. The lady had thought it best to take her own life than to suffer at the hands of Madame Galoria. This revelation led to the top room being broken into by police and detectives to investigate the claims made by the cook. And for sure, the top room was hell on earth for the slaves that found themselves there. When the police and detectives opened the door, they were not prepared for what they were about to see, a room of horrors. People found, the police found the dead bodies of several slaves in the top room. The smell was so bad that police officers turned away quickly, throwing up their morning breakfast. But that was not the worst of it. In the top room, slaves were tortured. The slaves found alive were deathly thin, a sign that they had not been eaten in ages. They had not eaten in ages. A woman was found wrapped in her own intestines. Damn. Another was found with his mouth sewn shut with feces in it. Oh my God. Slaves had the slaves had metal bars with spikes around their necks to prevent them from moving their heads, while others were put into small cages and their bones broken to fit in. People were beyond shocked when news of this incident at Madame Galoria spread through New Orleans like wildfire. The discovery of Madame Laloria's wicked ways made it to a local newspaper, which reported the witnesses, which reported what the witnesses had seen. Um, The pleasant, beautiful, and seemingly kind woman was a sadistic murderer, a serial killer. People had never witnessed slaves being treated so horribly. This says a lot, given that during this time it was okay to treat your slave badly. However, Madame Laloria had crossed the line, and the whole community agreed on this. The extreme cruel treatment of the slaves in the Laloria house was illegal and therefore warranted criminal investigation. More importantly, the New Orleans community was extremely outraged by the cruel nature of the Lalorias. Now this is crazy because this is way before any thought about slaves being freed. You know, this is what 17. What year this was? 18, like the early 1800s. Yeah, early 1800s, 1834. This is crazy, man. So you know what I'm saying? You have to think for them to be outraged at her for the treatment of her slaves back in these days, where you can do anything you wanted to black people, black slaves. It says a lot. Like she must be doing some foul stuff to these slaves, but these racist white people who had slaves too, to be outraged at her how she treated her slaves. She had to be doing some heinous stuff to them. The extreme cruel treatment of the slaves in the Lalauria's house was illegal and therefore warranted criminal investigation. More importantly, the New Orleans community was extremely outraged by the cruel nature of the Lalorias. This led to many wanting to serve justice themselves. Mobs destroyed the mansion and all its property at 1140 Royal Street. In doing so, they also uncovered numerous graves on the property. The graves belonged to the slaves that had been murdered by Madame Galoria. Wow. So she would just kill them and throw them out in the backyard. However, I bet she probably had the slaves dig the holes for the other slaves too that she killed. However, before the mom could get to Madame Galoria and her family, they fled the area and were never seen in New Orleans again. Less is known about Madame Galoria after the fire. However, it is believed that she fled to Paris, where she died in 1849. Um, even before she died, slavery was still in effect. Because slavery didn't end until 1862. She died in 1849. So another 12 years before slaves could be freed. Wow, or 12 or 13 years. Having slaves in itself is horrible. Mama Loria was beyond evil because not only did she have slaves, but she tortured and murdered them for no reason than her sadistic pleasures. What is even more concerning is that Mama Loria is unlikely to have been the only slave owner who treated slaves so badly. She just happened to be the one who she just happened to be the only one who got caught. It is unfathomable that slaves were subjected to such a vile treatment. It is important to continue to continue these discussions about black suffering to prevent history from repeating itself. Sadly, black lives don't matter. Then and centuries later, black people still have to fight for their lives to matter. Wow. So true. That's the story of Madame Laloria. Evil, evil, evil woman. I read about this story some years back when I was in middle school. I just glanced across it, but I did remember people talking about um, the Laloria Mansion, which is still there. You can go to the French Quarters right now. They rebuilt when I heard the Laloria family, the doctor's family, rebuilt, even though they supposedly had fled to France, his family kept the mansion and rebuilt it back up. It's been sold to different people throughout the years, but now it's owned by this billionaire who pretty much sealed the place shut. He bought it and he sealed the Laloria Mansion up. Nobody can go in it. And it is to be said that this guy is supposedly a family member of the Lalorians. You know, so you know. Of the I'm sorry, not the Lorians, but her family, the Dolphinis, her family before she married the doctor, her blood family. He's the billionaire that pretty much owns it now is part of that family. That's what I heard. But they said that he won't let nobody has been in it since he bought it. He bought it, billionaire bought it, sealed it up. Nobody's ever been in it. He keeps it like it looks nice, You can see pictures of it on Google, but the place, nobody can go in it. It's been said that before he bought it, when people couldn't actually go inside it, that when people stayed the night in the Laloria Mansion, they would see ghosts of like slaves, black slaves walking the halls and stuff like that, little kids and stuff like that. That's one of the rumors. And also was rumored that a couple of other people um, saw Madame Loria in different parts of the house at different times of the night. That's what some of the rumors were, that the ghosts of the slaves were in the house. Um, and that particular top room is still like that top room is still there. They just sealed it off and everything. It's all sealed up. But that attic, she would take them to the attic. That room that the cook described was the room at the very top of the stairs, the very very end of this big mansion, the very top of the stairs of the house that nobody really went to because it led to the attic, and then from the attic it led to the roof. So when the little 9-year old, it was 8-year old and 9-year old girl that Laloria killed when she was on top of the roof. She was running from the attic because Madame Lori's getting ready to torture her. They think that she broke free and ran to the top, trying to get away from Madame Laloria. Madame Laloria grabbed her whip, chasing after her, ran her up the rest of the stairs to the top of the roof from the attic. The girl didn't have nowhere to go. She was so scared of getting what. She probably, little girl seeing all that shit in that attic. people limbs, people. She probably was the little girl probably was seeing that. She probably hell no. Can you imagine a little girl? So she probably like, I'm not going back. Like I'd rather die than to go back to have her take me back into that room, that attic. You know, some of them slaves could have been her mom or her dad. They probably, so her jump. She just jumped. Like I'll just kill myself to go. You know what I'm saying? Because you only can imagine what this little girl probably saw that made her want to take her own life. But that was where everything took place, is in the attic. Uh, but they don't know if her husband was involved. I'm thinking her husband probably was the one that was doing all this stuff, and she just, they probably was doing all these little sick. Back in those days, they would do all kind of medical experiments and all kind of stuff. They would try to do things to see, because don't nobody give a damn about black people, especially that, now, of course. But back then, they really didn't give a damn about black people. So you're just a shell of you're just a animal to them. So let's try this. But they know we're human. Let's try this experiment out on these slaves and these black people and see what we can come up with. Let's do some medical research. That's why that's why black people were very hesitant when this vaccine came out to take it, because of the history of black people being guinea pigs for medical research in America. So that's where all that stems from. But interesting story, man. What do y'all think about Madame Galoria? Ghost story, huh? Here's an ideal, guys. And from what I heard, Kathy Bates, it's a show called American Horror Story. Kathy Bates portrayed Madame Galoria. Of course, the story was twisted a lot. It wasn't the exact story. Who's also Gabrielle Sidibe was in that particular uh, season of American Horror Story. But yeah, it was based on Madame Galoria. Kathy Bates played Madame Laloria, actually played Laloria on American Horror Story. And they talk about all that. But a lot of the story is twisted around. It wasn't the exact truth of exactly what happened. But yeah, it was pretty good. I saw the episode. But somebody needs to do a movie about Madame Laloria, like making like a horror movie. You know what I'm saying? That's scary, dude. Like that's crazy, And like I said, for the community to be outraged about how cruel she was treating her slaves, and they had slaves themselves, for them to be outraged about how she was treating her slaves, she must be was doing some heinous stuff to them slaves, man. Like unthinkable, imagined stuff. She probably, especially back then, like those days, everything was PG. Everything was PG, like except for treating us like humans. Everything was PG, so you didn't see like real heinous stuff back then. So she was doing heinous stuff that you would see nowadays. People would be like, "Oh, that's not nothing." To them, it was like, "Oh my God, what the hell's wrong with this woman?" She was doing like straight heinous stuff. So she must have really been doing some real heinous stuff for those slave owners to be mad at her about what she did to her slaves, because they probably was treating their slaves just as bad too. If not, you know what I'm saying? But not as bad as she was treating them. So that's what I'm saying. She probably was doing some real foul stuff for them to run her out of town, white woman. Anyway, what y'all think about this video? Go ahead and leave your comments. And what y'all think about Madame Laloria, man? Creepy, huh? Talk to y'all later. Subscribe to my channel. Take care.